So thank you all so much for joining us today. I'll do a little bit of an introduction, but then we'll jump straight into the topic. So I am Talia, the MD of Connected Talent Technology, and we have some wonderful speakers with us today. We've got a discussion all around kind of keep warm strategy and what that means to different businesses. And then we'll have a Q&A at the end. If you have questions as you go, there's a Q&A feature in Teams, so please just pop questions in and we'll get to that at the last kind of 10 minutes of this session. So a little bit about Connector Talent Technology. So we've got two products, one that's really focused on the candidate experience from talent pooling through the recruitment process, and then that kind of pre-boarding phase, which is traditionally called the kind of keep warm phase. But actually today we'll be tackling whether it extends a bit further back. And then we have an employee mentoring platform that's used once people are actually within the business. And we've got lots of different customers, and three of them are on our call today. And yeah, as I've said, this is me, and then we have three other wonderful speakers alongside us today who I'm going to get to introduce themselves. So Ian, over to you first, a little bit about yourself, your role and where you work.
Yeah, I think I'm competing for the longest title on this slide. I needed like an extra thing on there. So hi everybody, I'm Ian from Lloyds Banking Group. So I look after early careers and specifically all of our school engagement, which goes all the way through secondary school and all the way down into primary school. So the youngest students that we work with are aged 5 all the way through to 19.
Amazing. And Trisha?
Hi everyone, yeah, I'm Trisha Lucas-Clark. I work for GSK. I'm working early talent recruitment as the diversity, equity, inclusion manager. So looking at supporting programs for apprentices, for interns, industrial placements, and our Future Leaders program, our graduates. I also oversee and lead the UK STEM program. So that's whatever we're doing across the UK in our local schools. I also site lead for our employee resource group for people from ethnically diverse backgrounds, and I feel they all come together to help within my role. So looking at all strands of diversity. So lovely to be here today. Looking forward to it.
Amazing. And finally, Helen.
Good afternoon, everyone. So yeah, I'm Helen Smith, work for AWE. I work with the team at AWE that lead and manage our Evolve graduate program. So within that, we run core development, we lead on placements, we do all of that development side for our graduates. I also have some line management responsibility for a number of graduates, and in particular and the reason I'm here today is because the pre-boarding, the keep warm aspect of bringing our graduates into our business sits with me. So yeah, thank you for the invite.
Amazing. It's great to have you all here. So today's topic is all around keep warm, and as you said, Helen, the kind of traditional version of keep warm that people would immediately think of is that kind of time period from job offer to day one. But actually on this call today, we've got a lot of people who keep talent warm from age 5 onwards. So we're going to tap into all of your different experiences to understand what keep warm means to you within your kind of role and parameters. So I will start with you, Trisha. How would you find your kind of keep warm strategy? And obviously you have a lot of stuff around kind of that recruitment process, but engaging early talent in STEM and how that looks, particularly with the D&I lens as well.
Yeah, so I think sum it in 3 words: it's communication, consistency, and connection. I think that's really, really important, and we do that. So it's we want to make sure people have a sense of our company culture, what's going on, break down some of those myths, but also building relationships and building networks. So building relationships really starting within the STEM with younger people, so they've got something to aspire to, as well as people who are actually applying for our role. So it spans quite an age group, maybe not quite as low as Ian is, but still looking at people, that will be applying for our roles in the future.
Mm-hmm. And Helen, how would you? Oh, sorry, no, you keep going.
I was just going to say, and I really feel that Connector helps us do that with using the platform as well, having it always on for people. So sorry.
We will definitely delve into like the realities of how you do the keep warm strategy. But Helen, how would you define yours at the moment?
Yeah, so keep warm for us is very much about the period of time between offer acceptance and start date with AWE. And the reason that we kind of really wanted to focus on that period of time is because we are an organisation involved in national nuclear security. So all of our graduates need to have developed vetting clearance before they can start working for us. Those of you on the call that may be familiar with security clearance and developed vetting in particular will be aware of the length of time that takes to put in place, and the average time frame is very much sort of 6 to 8 months. In some circumstances it can be longer, so for that reason we kind of release our recruitment campaign early doors. In an ideal world, we'd like to have all of our offers made before Christmas, which gives us the period of time from January to the end of September to get security clearance in place. Before we started using Connector, that was a bit of a void of information. So the keep warm, the onboarding period for us really allows us to kind of engage with the candidates that have accepted our offer, start building that relationship with them, and just keep them interested for the period of time that it takes for developed vetting to come to fruition, and then we can confirm their start date.
I remember when we chatted first, you talked about how just for kind of the normal employee who's got the experience of the employment world finds that vetting process quite daunting. You're often in the dark. There's not that much control you can have over it, which you then lends on someone who's like new to the corporate world. And it sounds intense.
It's quite intense. It's quite an intense process for those people that have been through it. It is very a vetting officer will delve into your personal life, into your finances, into your relationships to quite an extent. I mean, it's a good thing. We are supportive of the process, of course, due to the nature of our business, but it is, you're absolutely right, it's a daunting process and it's a lengthy process. And yeah, for someone who's kind of new to the world of work, particularly in our kind of environment, it can be a bit of a shock. So yes,
definitely. And then Ian, I feel like your kind of intro of yourself explains your keep warm actually starts very early doors, but how would you kind of define that?
Yeah, so clearly, you know, we have so as an organisation, we have 1,500 apprentices on at any one time and several hundred graduates. So the points that Tricia said about keep warm in terms of candidate hiring and that period of time between offer and then acceptance and coming in, that all still applies to us. I used to think that our vetting was quite strict, and then I'm not so sure actually now, having heard Helen's version of it. In there as well. But I think there are other ways of looking at how to keep warm as well. So one is around, you know, students are starting to develop their understanding, they're thinking about careers at a much earlier age, and so we can also think of keep warm as that period from how do you continue a relationship with people that you may be starting maybe when they're as young as 13, 14, as they're starting to explore more about themselves, that they've met you for the first time. So there are other ways of thinking about keep warm rather than just in the more transactional recruitment side as we have thought about it. And the other angle, I think, which is interesting that we're exploring at the moment, is keep warm around particular experiences within that period, you know, that of children and young people still being at school. So, for example, within the context of work experience that we may be offering, we have almost like a mini version of that kind of onboarding side and then offboarding in the sense of work experience that you would have in recruitment. So I think there's different ways of being able to take the phrase keep warm and then really think more expansively about its application.
Yeah, definitely.
Totally agree. And why is it important to your business? Ian, I'll go to you first.
For me, well, I mean, the main thing, you know, is that we work really hard to talk to people, to create meaningful encounters with them, and what we want is to deepen that relationship. And you know, before I was doing this role, I'm a proposition developer by heart. That is what I do. And when you learn about doing propositions, you're always thinking about the leaky bucket is what you're concerned about. So you're always thinking about what effort do I have to do to attract people in, and then how do I keep the right people in play so that by the end I actually have the right number of people falling out of the funnel. And this sense is no different. You'd kind of like, for most of us who do commercial propositions, that's the way that you think. recruitment's the same thing, really. You spend so much effort trying to talk to people in the first instance. Keep warm is a kind of financially sensible way of saying, how do I retain that investment? So ultimately, I bring great talent who really want to work with me and are going to stay with me because they have learnt to know, like, and trust me through that process. At the end of recruitment, even after getting through Helen's vetting, they still know, love, and like, and want to trust AWE and stay with them.
Helen or Trisha, anything to add in terms of why that's important to your businesses?
I was sort of nodding in agreement there, Ian, thinking I like to think of it as hum, sing, shout, that it's always on in the background, that hum, keeping that engagement, which will help. I think if they know that we're still interested in them, although they've got the job offer, or we want, that we still want them. It's helping on those renegs and withdrawal offers. I think, we keep hearing more and more that Gen Z are likely to accept lots of offers and then right at the end say, oh, I'm just taking this one. And you've gone through all that, time, expense, bringing people on. So it's, from that point of view, it's keeping them engaged. But I think from a young age as well, it's that giving them that I could do that, I could be that, and they're able to see themselves in that role. So by keeping that keep warm with the younger people, and in that sort of hum, you keep thinking, oh yes, GSK, I've seen that. You've got those touch points, and then when we've come to shout about things or sing about things, they're like, I already know who they are, I want to work there. So it's that side of the keep warm, I think, is important.
Totally agree. I also love hum, sing, shout. Is it hum, sing, shout, or hum, sing, dance?
Hum, sing, shout. But yeah, I guess you could dance as well. Yeah.
Yeah, so just elaborating on both of those points, I think Ian kind of knocked it on the head there, where he said about it's the investment, it's the retention of the investment. So particularly for AWE and our graduates, we are investing in them from quite early on, before they've even started working for the company, because we need the vetting in place, which has a cost to it. So it is so important then for us to retain the graduates' interest, make sure that we are building the loyalty, getting their excitement about joining our business early doors, so that when we go through the vetting process, which we know takes a long time, we know that our graduates who have already accepted offers for AWE are having their heads turned by other organisations, as they move through that time frame. We absolutely want to make sure that it's us they choose in the end, so that when their clearance comes through and we can confirm a start date, they're like, yes, you're the choice for me, you're the right one for me. So yes, so just in terms of the title of this session this afternoon, our keep warm strategy has to be pretty hot, to make sure that the answer is AWE.
No tepid keep warm strategy here.
No.
And any times that this has not been so successful, I feel like there'll be people on the call that are kind of looking to you and being like, wow, you're doing so much here and this is amazing. But I imagine all of you have not, well, I'm still sure that there are mistakes being made. But if you look back on your past, are there ever things where you're like, oh God, I did not smash that? Ian, I'm going to go to you first.
Thank you so much. Well, we're relatively new to using Connector as a platform, so we're still growing in that one. And I guess I can probably, the best way therefore is to reflect on what life is like without that platform, and that frustration, not just from the employer's side, as Helen's articulated, that frustration of like the leaky bucket and the investment you put in, but also the frustration before we had this of standing in a careers fair and having the most awesome conversation with a child and a parent, and then just being able to go, well, yeah, but you can't apply yet because you're too early to leave school. Here's a website. And it's kind of like, or why don't you go on a mailing list? And it's like, I don't know what your inbox is like every day, but I'm like forever going through unsubscribe and trying to curate and going, did I ever actually sign up to get this stuff in there? And it's kind of like it's not enough, because the mailing lists aren't delivering value. They're transactional in there. They're not really adding value to me and helping me in those moments. So I think my reflection to your question is remembering life before a platform that we're still getting to know. It's not perfect. I want to kind of go, we're just a couple of months in, but I can remember those conversations and looking into parents' eyes and thinking, I know what, if I was in your shoes, I know what you're going to ask me next, and I don't have a good enough answer because I don't think this experience is good enough for you. I know what you want, and I'm not doing it for you. So that's kind of my answer to your question.
Yeah, I remember we would also talked about like emails you were getting or LinkedIn connections, and there's just like a whole wealth of issues that come with that. Whereas if you've got a kind of structured, safeguarded process for that.
Yeah, and I'm sure I'm not alone here. Look, in the world of early careers, and when we were preparing for this call, you kind of like you start realizing that there's one of me in Lloyds, and there's one person in AWE, and whatever. We're kind of like small and mighty in our own organisations quite often, and then understandably, then you become identifiable as that person in the organization, and that's not fair to us, and also introduces an amount of personal risk around safeguarding as well. So you're right, I would have students reaching out to me on LinkedIn, parents writing to me personally, and it's not a helpful not a helpful thing for it's not helpful or healthy for anybody to be set up in that way.
Yeah, totally agreeing with you there, Ian. Yeah, sometimes on LinkedIn, I'm trying to be careful about who I connect with, but sometimes you just press it and then you think, oh no, because straight back, I had somebody the other day ask me to be their mentor. I was like, and they tell me all this story, but I was able to go back and say, oh, actually, have a look at our platform. This would be actually ideal. You can sign up for a mentor and you can learn about our business. And they were like, oh, that's great. I've already signed up. Thank you. And it took that pressure off me because, as you say, you do become that person that people all link into, and you hear their stories, and they don't realize how many of those you get. And if you were to respond to everybody and do things, you would not have your day job. You'd have 2 day jobs just doing that, wouldn't you? So
I think
it's
I
really
think
helps.
yeah, and sorry, when I didn't mean to cut across there, but
No.
I think Tricia, you raised like a really important point as well, which is I am not the expert in everything, but I do know lots and lots of really clever people. So I definitely don't want to have everybody looking at me and going, look, you can tell me all about cybersecurity and network development and network ops and data analytics and AI, because I'm not an expert in every. I do know lots of experts. And that's the danger when you become that kind of like identifiable single person as the funnel in there as well. I want people to be well served, and if they want to connect with really smart people who've got similar life experiences, of similar age, of similar characteristics, or whatever it is, I want to get them connecting with the right people, not having to keep going through me as a gateway.
It's also you're then the face of Lloyd's employer brand, and you are just one person. That is like so much pressure to put on you, and you're wanting to create like role models, people that can see themselves in the business, and you're just one person. That can't be the inspiration for everyone. Obviously you are very inspiring, Ian, but Helen, anything to add in terms of that?
Yeah, so just in terms of where we've not done it quite so well, I think I'm also kind of thinking back to a time before we had Connector, and again we're quite new to the platform, and we're coming to the end of our 2nd season with Connector. Before we had the platform, our Keep Warm strategy, all of our comms were entirely based around emails to our pipeline candidates, which we know Gen Z do not kind of respond well to emails. It's not something that's kind of within their environment, really. It's just not a done thing anymore. So that did have complications. And when you kind of think back, I mean, like we do every day, oh, who sent me that? When did they send it? What did they think of a buzzword? See if I can search, just to kind of answer one of the many questions they would have had. So now that we have Connector, and we've got an external platform that can be accessed by our new graduates at any point 24/7, and within that platform also, this is a big plug for Connector, the Connector Mentors Buddies, as we've named them, offers up a number of individuals that are pipeline grads can connect with at any point, ask questions. Can you tell me what it's like, what this is like at AWE, what's the culture like, what's your placements experience been, etc., etc. So that has been a massive help in terms of sharing the load, as Ian and Tricia have articulated in terms of, you know, answering some of those questions, but also just having a kind of one place where all of those FAQs, all of the information, all of the pre-boarding stuff that we would want to share can be housed. So yeah.
And in terms of making a business case, and it could be either for budget for products like ours, or it could be for resource internally, how has that looked for you? Oh, Helen, you can go first.
Yes, yeah. So ours has been centered very much around reducing reneges. That was the purpose of the, you know, why we started looking at platforms in the very first instance. How do we make sure that we reduce the reneges? You know, as we've said, as Ian articulated earlier, it's that investment that we've already made when we make an offer. Yeah. We want to make sure that we retain that, and that you know, those individuals actually are the ones that join the business. So the business case was entirely centered around reneges, about reducing that number that eventually say no to us, and a lot of that was centered around the fact that we could start to build the loyalty, the excitement, have that connection, have a way to kind of constantly communicate with those people that we have selected to join us, was really where our business case was centered around. And we are very delighted that actually in our first year of using Connector, we saw a massive reduction in reneges. So yeah, so it was successful for us from year one.
And Tricia, your kind of business case, I know yours is around like a little bit of D&I and also that kind of register your interest flow that I know previously was quite intense. Is that the main areas you've lent on in terms of business case?
Yeah, I think it's that sort of the diversity and equity the part of it, so that people that need extra support, that don't get it for whatever reasons, they can come to this platform, they can learn about the business, we can talk them through the interview process, assessment centres, talk about, you know, whether they're having a strength-based assessment. They can connect with they can connect with the mentors, obviously, but they can hear from some of the, you know, say our apprentices or our graduates. There'll be a piece by then, there may be some videos, and then they can then actually see the video and then think, oh, I can actually now talk to that person. So it's that sort of connection is bringing it alive to life, and doing that. You know, we've just introduced a lead mentor now to build more of that community, because mentoring is something that GSK is heavily investing in over the next 10 years. So it links in nicely with you know, with that sort of vision. So we can say to hiring managers, yes, let's use Connector. We can use it for register your interest. We can attract more diverse talent, and we can actually help them on that journey to lift people up for the equity part, and they can connect. So there is the sort of a few bits there. It's a nice flow through, and then as we get through the season, we can have a look at the metrics and see, you know, how many people it's helped, how many people have come through that have used Connector.
Yeah, I was chatting to Lucy the other day, who is Tricia's boss, and she was talking about how skills are going to be a really key part of the hiring process for GSK going forward, and thinking more about like the core skills rather than necessarily like the job title, which I think it'll be interesting to see how we can kind of bring that to life in the platform through the content, through mentors, to really highlight that you as an individual have core skills and you don't necessarily have to put yourself down a set stream based on preconceptions that you have. So that will be interesting as we develop.
It will be, and I think that's something that people enjoy talking to their mentors about. They hear their journeys, their stories, what they did. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and it's like, maybe I studied this thing, but I haven't necessarily gone into that certain thing. And mentor profiles can really debunk certain kind of preconceptions about career paths. So, Ian, anything from you in terms of business case? I know you were so passionate about this, so I imagine your passion was the business case in the first place anyway.
Yeah, I can be reasonably influential in that. I think it's really interesting listening, you know, with Helen and Tricia, who've been working with you guys for a bit longer. I think we're kind of like started at almost like the other end, so we will grow into the space that Helen and Tricia have mastered. So the way that the way that I've looked at this is, so we will look at this almost as a form of pre-skilling, which refers and touches on your point earlier. So the big lament for most employers is that they would like young people to have certain skills that they're exiting out of school maybe not within as optimal a condition, which then means that we have to then do top-up training and development afterwards to get that right. And so working, we know, for example, that you need multiple encounters. Young people need multiple encounters successively with employers if they're going to overcome some of the confidence barriers, particularly in the more deprived communities in there as well. And we were at a point where we were reaching and talking to somewhere in the region of 35,000 school students a year. And then just letting them go and then starting with another 35,000. So these things just don't really compute. You can't take the data point that says they need 5 successive encounters, but we couldn't get to a point with schools where they could bring us back the same students that we'd spoken to. So we weren't really meeting the way that we know that the social evidence provides. So that's part of the aspiration of what we will get from Connector, is that we can stay in touch and continue to invest in a growing community of students, so we can work through that period before they come into transition to the employment market in pre-skilling them, so that they are better prepared and they have a better transitional experience going into the world of work, some of which will be coming into the world of work to work for Lloyds Banking Group, some of which will be leaving and transitioning into the world of work and maybe with GSK or with AWE, and that doesn't really matter in there.
You're adding to the UK workforce, basically.
Yeah.
And obviously the product is one way that you all kind of implement your strategies. But how does that all embed? How does that all look? Ian, I know you do a lot of schools outreach. What was if you were going to give a high level view of what your strategy looks like and the kind of realities of how you implement that? I mean, it's quite a big question, but how, if you could describe that for us.
35,000 of them, yeah. Yeah, so basically, so there's a pull and attractor from schools to come in from Lloyd. They want Lloyds to come in and do things. That's great, we'll do that. That's provider access legislation, all good. So all of our outreach is then, whatever outreach we do, we can then serve Connector as the way for them to stay in touch with us. And that way they get the proposition as they get it, is they get a curated version, which we have aligned all of the content to their stage of schooling. So then it's not a go to a website, the resources are there somewhere. This is, you are in year 10 and you are seeing specifically answers to the questions that you have and the missions that you have to solve at year 10, which may be different when you're in year 12 or beyond that. So that's the way in which we're using it. And then other activities that we then do, so like work experience, for example, which will pop up at year 10 and year 12, will then fall out from that proposition. So all our events go into Connector, all our vacancies are advertised through Connector, all our work experience is advertised through Connector. So you kind of need, if you want priority access to what I can do for you as Lloyds Banking Group, you need to be in the club, and that is the club.
Yeah. And your working experience, I know it's slightly off topic, but just describe that a little bit.
Yeah, so we do, around 1,500-1,600 students come on work experience with us. We have different experiences from 2-day to 5-day experiences. Some are delivered in school for some of our distance ones, and some of them are delivered in our hub sites. There's never enough supply to meet the demand for work experience in there. But again, what the platform allows us to do is to really help students to almost go through a process of thinking, is this going to be the right work experience for me, rather than just grabbing something to just tick a box. So that's why I referred to earlier that some of the disciplines that Tricia and Helen were talking about with onboarding for hiring, you can replicate gently, you can replicate some of those things in work experience, just to make sure that, again, if we're investing, because it is a real cost delivering work experience, if we're investing, then we're investing in people who will really appreciate and get something out of it.
Totally agree. And Helen, your Keep Warm strategy, obviously Connector is a massive part of that.
It is, yes.